Today on Damian on Design, we talk about smart space, and Damian, you say it rests on three basic premises.
Yes, it does.
What are those?
The first one is that people that work together in teams and collaborate in a smart space, and obviously we'll get to the definition of smart space. This is a way for them to do it in a more productive, a more motivated, more efficient, and more creative environment. So it's striving to create space to facilitate that to the best that it can be. So whether it's creating product, marketing plan, business plan, strategizing about, looking at competitors' product, your own product, it really applies across the board. The second premise being that verbal communication is just a part of this. We can all talk well and so on, and we can communicate, but really it's without the graphic component of this process, it doesn't complete the circle. You have to be able to put ideas up, literally. I mean, we've all worked with flip charts. This is taking it to, in our mind, a different level of putting information up so that it's visual and then capturing it.
And also not necessarily working on site with everyone at one facility, right? Correct.
And then the third premise is that the space that you are working in for these specific tasks, that has the most enormous power to really facilitate. And we've talked about the ability of space and design to affect people's well-being. This is the importance here, is that the ability to design a space to affect the well-being of process and the well-being of the people participating. So those are the three premises.
We've talked about in the past things like chairs, desks,
correct,
how those are constructed to be the most conducive to that creative thinking process,
yes,
and to doing work. Damian Farrell's with Damian Farrell Design Group. He's an architect here in Ann Arbor, and each Saturday we have him on talking about these issues of design and the importance of design in our lives. His website is dfdgonline.com. Okay, so you've got productivity, creativity, being motivated, all part of this, playing into it.
Right.
And a good local example, I think, is Rich Sheridan with Menlo. His company, what they ended up doing, instead of everyone having an office or even a cube, it's an open area, and your desk you can roll over to other people. So if
yes,
I'm doing work with this person, I can roll over there, or I'm doing work with this person.
Right.
What you're talking about, though, takes it a step even further than that.
Yes, well, it really could be two things. A, it could be just dedicated spaces, for instance, within an office area. It could also be the whole office, in a sense. Now, Barracuda, as you know, we're working with Barracuda, and we had Sean Heine in here a few weeks ago. What we're doing with them is planning and allowing that form of flexibility and looking at the whole environment of how they create and interact with each other. So between their development group, their software engineers, their customer service, it's different working relationships, and that's what I'm talking about. But there's also this higher level that I think is still out there that few people have taken it to, which is creating spaces, making that commitment. All right, so this needs to be CEOs, owners who understand this is a commitment, and that it's also part of a strategic plan for their businesses. So it's not just the physical space, it's not just the sensory elements of it, but there's also a strategic plan to improve productivity, to improve product, to plan better, to aim higher. I think the perfect scenario would be to take a space and dedicate that space to just that. This is the space in which we gather, we talk, we share, we have visual communications tools. We're able to capture what we put up in the way of visual communications tools, so the ability to hook to smartphones, iPads, computers, hook internationally, we've got this fantastic technology available to us now. And Boeing, when Boeing went through the 787 Dreamliner development, that's exactly what they did. Their design teams worked from around the country, around the world, gathering information and really come up with an extraordinary product, yes, it may look like a regular Boeing on the outside, but the interior of the process, the mechanics, everything is completely different. They turned everything upside down. And it was only these dedicated spaces that really enabled that to go to the next level. And then the sensory parts of this, as I call it, is just what we talked about, the comfort elements. So people need to be comfortable. So the environment, the humidity, your teams will take different forms throughout a process. So you may have small groups, you may be listening to someone who's leading, for instance. So the furniture needs to be flexible, the seating needs to be flexible. Some people like to work standing up, as we've learned at Barracuda. Some people like different ways of gathering and talking. So all of those comfort things are very, very important. And then changing that atmosphere. As an example, when we worked with Hariba Instruments here in town, it was a number of years ago, that was one of our challenges. How do we change the mindset of people coming in from their daily work out in the office area into a conference room to work with us on planning a complete new building and a facility? So you've got the whole range of people, from testing engineers to people writing software, marketing, sales, management, PR, all of this. And what we did, I had giant buttons made that said Hariba Design Team Member.
Oh.
And so when you walked in the room, you had to pin your button. And the intention there was to change your mindset. You were no longer doing what you were doing every day. You
Your
were
normal
now,
work, yeah.
You are now a member of the design team.
Right.
And you
great
could look
idea.
around. You know, I wanted to have silly hats and stuff like that. I'm really, but I was able to get as far as
The button.
the buttons. But these spaces need to be fun. They need to change your mindset.
You know, when you talk about technology in those spaces, so important. First of all, even if all you have is pen and paper, people when they come into that environment need to know that what they say is going to be captured in some way.
Yes.
I think there's nothing worse than going to a meeting like that and giving ideas, walking out and you're wondering, do people that are going to be making decisions, did they hear what you were saying? Whereas if you've got the technology on the wall, you've got computers, you've got a way to hook into other parts of the company that may be across the country, now you're having a really great discussion and it's getting captured in a much better way.
It's got to be, yes, it's got to be captured immediately.
Yeah.
I think, the flip chart thing, that's where the danger, you're right. You sit down, you all have some ideas, you throw them up, you flip the flip chart, you tear it off, you stick it on the wall for a little bit. What happens to it then?
That seems so old-fashioned, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does, doesn't it? So if you've got the ability to instantaneously capture, share this, and share a process, particularly, between facilities, as I say, cross-country, internationally, it's sort of using Skype-style technology in the moment.
Yeah, that's right. And we're talking about smart spaces, creating these kinds of spaces that allow this creative thinking process.
Right.
And the kinds of things that you need in these rooms. An example that Damian just gave revolved around the Boeing company and what they have done to create their Dreamliner.
Right.
And you have a picture here that, for the benefit of our YouTube audience,
Right.
people will be able to see. What am I looking at with this room? Describe this.
You're looking at one of their creation rooms, if you will, one of their very smart space, and it's so well illustrated. To the left of the screen, we can see other people in a different location. So there's
Up on the wall.
Up on the wall. So there's this dialogue going on between different groups, and then there are these graphics that are up on the wall that are the components of the Dreamliner have been separated into different areas. So unfortunately the graphic, and this came right off the Boeing website showing the process of designing this, it doesn't unfortunately describe exactly what's going on here. But it's pretty simple when you look at it to understand that they're isolating pieces of the fuselage, they're isolating the cockpit area, they've isolated the wings, the tail. And I know from my readings that that's exactly what they did, is they dissected every single part from people all around the world on their team.
What's interesting about this, I guess we could call it a smart board that they're using, seems to have different components to it. It has not only the big display of the Boeing jet dissected,
Right.
but as you mentioned, the team members that aren't actually in the room, they're up on a separate screen.
Right.
And it's just, then you've got a screen behind the main speaker who's at the front at a podium.
Right.
And obviously that podium is very well equipped. There is the Ann Arbor Regent, which just built, that's the Dahlman property over on Carpenter Road. They took an old hotel
Yes.
and have done a gorgeous job retrofitting this. Their conference center in there is the best I have ever seen.
Really?
It has lecterns that can move up and down with just one button depending on the height of the speaker behind the lectern.
Yeah.
How many times have you seen a short person have to get up on a stool at a lectern? And they have control of the entire room, the projectors bringing them down, the screens coming down, all at their disposal. They worked with Thalner here in
sure,
town.
yeah. Oh, Carl Guillumchen.
Yes, yes.
One of my clients.
That's right.
Yeah.
To do this, and it's just top notch
Yeah.
all the way around. If someone's having a conference, fabulous space over at Ann Arbor Region.
And those are those are the sensory things, glare, lighting, the flexibility to move groups together, to move, and that kind of control. I mean, how many times has someone walked up to the microphone, where there's a foot difference in
Right.
height between the speakers, and they're up there trying to adjust the microphone, and it's awkward, it's uncomfortable. Those are the things that detract from creativity, from focus. You want to get, by changing that environment, you want people's total creativity and focus, and the enjoyment of the process, delighting in that creativity. And so you've got to remove the barriers from doing that to create this. But it's got to be, as I said, I think the strategic role of this too is important. It's not just fun and creating a few new ideas and so on. A smart CEO or owner will know that this is a way to let the talent flow and let the talent rise. So it becomes not only a way to attract people, but to let the people in the company who really have not just the talent for what they may do every day, but for other things. And so that's when this does become a strategic and becomes an investment. I sent you a link about that, I think it was advertising, no, an events company that, for instance, had built that treehouse in their space, and that the access down into their smart space, one of the ways to access down was down a kiddie slide. All right, obviously I'm sure there's a staircase somewhere, but if you want to change, whoop, down you go, and you arrive on your feet or you fall on your bottom, whatever, and you're all laughing and great. You've changed the mindset and you've changed the space and the feeling. That's what smart space is all about.
Smart spaces. What role does how big a space is play in all of this? Does that really matter? Is it more about the technology, about the comfortability? Does it matter how large? In other words, if a company would like to change maybe their conference room over, but it's not a big conference room, what are some of the things you would do as an architect to say, here's what we can do to make this a smart space, even though it might not be a large space?
Yeah, that's a very good question. So if it's space that's not large enough, then I think it comes down to creating strategy on how to deal with things. So you know what your company's doing and making and how it works and so on. And so the question is, how does this space facilitate or hinder that process? So then it becomes an organizational thing. All right, we're going to have to break up in smaller groups, or we can set up another area, and using technology, again, another area within the office that can enhance the group size. On the other hand, if it's a very large space, then there are many things you can do with either mobile whiteboards, mobile flip charts, mobile screens, which is what we have in our office. We have L-shaped screens that have twin wall, polycarbonate sheets in them, and then they have aircraft cable and paper clips hanging on them, so we can move things around. So that's how you adjust space, and if your tables can move around. So if we're gathering in a group, just as if the four of us, we'd want to be gathering around this table and talking our ideas and capturing them. But if there's someone, as I say, leading the group and setting the tone, setting the tasks for the day, then you want that to be larger, but you don't want to feel like you're in a cavernous space. So that's where the flexibility of design is so important, along with the comfort of seating tables, all of that stuff. Individual control of lighting, air conditioning, heating, humidity, and so on.
Individual control, that reminds me when first time I went to Damon's, all those screens,
Yes.
where you can watch different sporting events, and Tigers game was on one of them, and that's the one we wanted to hear. And I was like, there's no sound in here. How do people hear the games? till it was pointed out to me that the control was right on.
It was right on your
right
table.
on the table, and you could individually listen to whatever game
whatever
you
game.
wanted to,
Yeah.
call it up. But those kinds of things in a workspace are important when you're trying to engage creativity.